There we go. Thanks, Bryce. All right, it's my pleasure now to introduce our keynote speaker today, Douglas Hendricks. He is currently spearheading work to establish a Salt Lake chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. He expects that most of us may know some of the national things that the FFRF is doing, so he's going to mostly talk about what they're doing in Utah, which we may not be aware of, and maybe talk about exploring some collaboration opportunities. Doug is a recently retired engineer, physicist, educator who spends some of his newfound free time volunteering with the Holding Out Help organization, assisting people who need help after escaping from polygamous-based religious cults. We're familiar with that organization here. When he's not doing this volunteer work, he travels the world looking for beautiful scenery to photograph, or capture on video, or just gaze at in awe. He was raised in a devout Mormon home, but while in his early 20s, he left the church despite family members pleading with him not to, since they were sure that his decision would lead to his eternal damnation. The jury is still out on that, so welcome Doug to the stage.
Thank you. Yes, I am a little worried about that last one, but not too much. I am Douglas Hendricks, and I am one of the people who's spearheading the Freedom from Religion Foundation Salt Lake chapter, which just barely got approved. Just 8 days ago, we got word from the national office that our application has been approved. We are now an official chapter. So this quote right here pretty well summarizes the two-pronged mission of the National Freedom from Religion Foundation. To be free from religion is an advantage for individuals, it's a necessity for many. So there are two prongs to this. One of FFRF's missions is to promote the advantages of being free from religion for individuals. The other part here is the protecting the wall that separates church from state. People have been fighting against that wall for a long time, chipping away at it. Right now, we've got people in office who want to bulldoze that wall to the ground. And FFRF is standing up and saying, no, okay, that wall needs to be protected. So what you see here are some clips from a newsletter that FFRF puts out 10 times a year, talking about the things that they've been doing to protect that wall. They've had a lot of successes. Sometimes the judges rule against them, so they haven't had total success. But these are the kinds of things that the FFR has done at the national level. Here's a few things that it's done locally. Even though we haven't had a solid chapter here, we've got like 250 members throughout Utah at FFRL. And when they see something shady going on, they've been notifying the national office, and the lawyers jump right on that. So here's a couple of letters, I won't go into any detail, but you can see Alpine School District was promoting religion in a way that they should not have, so the FFRF lawyers said, you need to stop that. Okay, so the American Leadership Academy was doing it, the Canyon School District was doing it, City of Riverton was doing it, Nebo School District was doing it, Davis School District was doing it. So these are the kinds of things that the FFRF has gotten involved in. And so as I and the other people locally here, as we got together, and we're asking ourselves, what do we as a local chapter want to do? Absolutely positively, we want to continue this, we want to do it better, we want to do it more successfully. So for sure, this is one of the key activities, and possibly the only activity. And what I mean by that is the other part of the FRF message about educating people about the advantages of being free from religion. Well, especially here in Utah, that could be a little bit controversial. I like to think of it as playing defense versus playing offense. So as long as we are protecting the wall that separates church and state, I view that as we're playing defense, and that's pretty non-controversial. Everybody I talk to agreed, yes, for sure we wouldn't do that. The other part, promoting the advantages of a life that is free from religion, well, I can see how that could be considered offense. And some people say that when you play offense, then you come across as offensive, and they get offended. And so we're kind of struggling with that. What you see here are some YouTube videos where one of the co-presidents of FFRF has been very active, going out there and giving talks and participating in debates and making videos, where I can see how people would say, whoa, wait a minute, he's on the offense, he's attacking. And so as I talk with the other members of Salt Lake chapter here, do we want to do this kind of stuff? Would it be maybe counterproductive to our more important mission to do this kind of stuff? One of the reasons why I'm here is because I want to get feedback from you about what you think about that. You're a group of free-thinking people. If we were to do stuff like this here in Utah, would you think that, that's crossing the line? We should maybe not do that. So I'm going to bounce a couple ideas off you today. And during the Q&A session, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on whether you think this would be acceptable or is this crossing the line. I mean, ideally, this is the way the world should be. We don't bother you, you don't bother us. Everybody peacefully coexist. Absolutely, this is what we would prefer. Unfortunately, real life is a little different. My religion says I can't do that. Okay, no problem. My religion says you can't do that. Okay, we got a problem. Okay. So this is something I see happen a lot, especially here in Utah. Right. So anyway, we have now formed a Salt Lake chapter. We have a website running here. So if you go to the website and then scroll down near the bottom, you'll come to a paragraph right here. It says what we do. And to be honest, we're still figuring that out. But one thing we've decided is something we're not going to do. A lot of the local chapters of FFRF, they have socializing events. They get together periodically just to socialize with like-minded individuals. So we asked ourselves, do we want to do that? And we decided we are not going to do that. And you guys are the number one reason why we're not going to do that. Because you guys are doing it and you're doing it well. So I see absolutely no reason to duplicate what you guys are already doing. So if you look on our website, you will see a link to your website. Now, I didn't ask for permission to put it on there. You water that. We're good. All right, so let's set aside the part of the mission where we're defending the wall between church and state, because I think that's pretty non-controversial. Let's talk about some of those other things we might do. Well, one thing that FFRF has done, and we might continue doing, we got a billboard here saying, I am an atheist and I vote. So basically we're saying, hey, we exist. Can you please at least acknowledge our existence? I mean, is that asking too much? So this is very similar to what another Utah-based group did. Here's a photograph that some of you might recognize, and in fact, some of you might be in this photograph. Anybody want to admit to being in this photograph? No? I know. That's me way back here. This is about 15 years ago, and so this group put together some funds and got this billboard that says, don't believe in God? You are not alone. Now, you might say, well, kind of a waste of money. Billboards are expensive. If that's all you're going to say, why would you bother with it? Well, I can tell you from personal experience, when I was a teenager, if I had seen a billboard like that, it would have been a tremendous comfort to me. Because as Angie mentioned earlier, I was raised in a very devout woman. But as I was growing up, I saw all sorts of things that just did not make sense to me. Logical contradiction, doctrinal contradictions, all sorts of things. And so as I was growing up, I kind of kept track of these. And I even had a 3-ring binder, pretty thick 3-ring binder where I kept all these things in there. And so when I got to be a teenager, I went to my parents and I went to my local church leaders. And I kind of laid things out and said, this is what I'm seeing. Can you help me with this? Over on the left side here, we have all these things that I'm seeing that lead me to believe that the church is what I was saying. And on the right side, I'm trying to compile a list of all the reasons why I should believe the church is what it claims to be. And as you can see, I'm not getting many on the right side. And the things that I have on the right side are pretty sketchy. So I said, can you please help me with this? So I talked to my parents, I talked to church leaders, and what I got was basically the Jedi handbook. You know what I mean, because these are not the droids you're looking for, right? Yeah. So I said, these things that you think you're seeing don't really exist. Well, yeah, I think they do. These things that you think you're seeing aren't really important. Yeah, I think they are. And then the big one is they say, well, Satan is the one who's putting these thoughts in your mind. You need to stop listening to Satan, right? So I really struggled with this, and some of the church leaders that I talked to were pretty good about going in and talking specifically about these things and what are the strengths and the arguments I'm using here. Not all of them were. I mean, I had a meeting with the general authority where, the local leaders weren't able to answer the questions, so they said, hey, how about we set up a meeting with the general authority? And if you're Mormons, the general authority, I mean, that's the highest you can get, right? So I said, yes, I would love that. And so I sit down with the general authority, I lay out my arguments here. He's silent for a while. Then he leans forward and says, tell me, Doug, have you been thinking impure thoughts? What a cop out. Oh man, a little blow. I was just a teenager. He's this exalted man, so I had to be very careful what he said. But now that I'm no longer a teenager, boy, would I like to have another conversation with that man. But anyway, all the people around me were telling me, look, Doug, you're delusional. You're seeing things that aren't real. And church is okay, the problem is you. So I was experiencing a lot of angst, anxiety, and in fact, I would even say torment. I was experiencing very real torment. Now, this was back in the days before the internet. So like I said, that billboard was really appreciated. Now that we've got the internet, things are a lot different. There's a lot of places you go on the internet to find out that you are not alone. This is my favorite one. I don't know if you guys are familiar with wasmormon.org. I like this one because the people who post their stories on this website, they're just ordinary people. They're not professional podcasters. This isn't John DeLynn or Alyssa Grenfell. These are ordinary, everyday people. And so if you go there and listen to their stories, I mean, it's really soothing. I don't know if any of you have a post on here. If you would like to post on here, I highly recommend it. You can do it anonymously if you want to. So I would have loved this. And by the way, if you want to post your story on here, it's really cathartic to do that. And how do I know that? Well, because my story is on here. So if you want to know some details about me, you can go right here and find out. But what I want to focus on today is the fact that I felt alone. I was tormented. It was just terrible. So I finally got a point which is I'm out of here. I am leaving the church, and in fact, I'm leaving the state of Utah. I wanted to be totally free from religion. So I went to California, Silicon Valley specifically. That's why I had the teacher. So yeah, my background is physics and engineering. So I made computer chips, and I loved it. But the thing that I especially loved about living in California was, for the first time in my life, I was free from religion, and it was glorious. And all the bad things that I've been told about what will happen if you leave religion, none of them happened. It was life without religion was glorious. Now, after a couple decades in California, my wife and I were talking about, what do we want to do for the rest of our lives? And so I thought, well, I'll give back. I'd like to give back to society. And so I thought, well, I'd like to be a teacher. So we could have stayed in California where the cost of living is really high, or we could come back to Utah. The cost of living is better, and we've got world-class ski resorts only 30-minute drive away. So a lot of advantages of coming back to Utah, but there are also some potential disadvantages. This is a meme right here that I think you've probably seen before. So this was very much on our minds, but we decided to come back to Utah anyway. And so we've been here surrounded by religion, and yet we've been able to live a life that's free from religion. Well, there are a couple of people who just will not stop trying to bring their testimonies to us, but we can deal with that. And so for the last several years, I've been a teacher. Now, I had several people ask me, hey, Doug, what's the deal with this picture? What's the story behind that? Well, it's just, I teach physics, and one of the projects that I have my students do involves rockets. And so I kind of came to be known as the Rocket Man. And one of my students created this for me, and I just love it. And students are such wonderful human beings. It's been such a pleasure to associate with them. And so this just reminds me of all my positive experiences with my students. I love it. So now we come to the big question. Some of you may be wondering, they say, okay, Doug, you're living a life here in Utah that's free from religion. You're perfectly happy. So if you're so big on freedom from religion, how about the other way around? Why can't religion be free from you? Okay? Very valid question. Okay, so why do I feel the need for a solid chapter of ethical art? Well, although religion is no longer harming my life, religion has caused tremendous harm in the lives of my students and other people I care about. A study was done a couple of years ago, Utah high school students, and more than 10% of the students in Utah identified as being either L, G, B, or T. And the torment that I felt when I was a teenager is nothing compared to the torment that my students have been feeling. This editorial cartoon in Salt Lake Tribune, this very accurately describes what many of my students have been feeling. And one of my students, when he finally got the courage to come out of the closet and tell his parents that he was gay, their response was, homosexuality is an abomination in the eyes of the Lord. If you don't repent of this horrible sin, you cannot live under our roof. And in the end, that's exactly what happened. They kicked him out. He was a high school kid, and they kicked him out of their home in the name of religion. So, yeah, religion is doing devil harm. Now, there's another student I need to tell you about. This other student was one that was especially close to me because he really liked physics. And so he would come into my room during lunchtime and we'd sit together and talk about physics and would also talk about just life in general. And he would tell me about his hopes and his dreams, his fears and his anxieties. And this was far and away the source of his fears and anxieties. Well, I don't want to go into details here, but let me just say that student is no longer alive. And it wasn't a traffic accident that he died in. So that hit me hard. I hold religion directly responsible for that student's death. And there are so many others. The suicide rate with LGBT is just significantly higher. I hold religion responsible for his death. So that's why I cannot sit still. That's why I think somebody needs to stand up. Now, a couple other things. So that's number one on the list of why I can't leave religion alone, but there are many others. So what you're seeing here is a website from one of those alternative high schools that students go to when they're not being successful in their regularly sending here. A large fraction of the student body are pregnant girls. Now, the reason given for why they send the girls to this school is because these schools supposedly have resources that the other schools don't. And yeah, there's definitely some truth to that argument. But I think there's a lot more to it than that. I have reason to believe that what's happening is, well, you know, the dominant religion here in Utah teaches that sexual sin is second only to murder in severity. So imagine you're a teenage girl who's pregnant and somebody drops that bomb on you. You've committed a sin second only to murder. Wow. And so the parents of the other kids in the school, you know, the virtuous girls, you know, they don't want their daughters associated with this sinner. They're afraid that the sin might rub off on her, might be contagious somehow. So I've seen instances where that was the reason the girls were sent to these alternative schools. And that just, it strikes me as so wrong. Now, up until now, I've talked about a lot of very dark and depressing things. I think we need to change the tone. Let me tell you an uplifting story. One of the girls in my school, one of my students, a wonderful kid, she got pregnant when she was a senior. But her parents were not shackled by the chains of religion. Her parents said, "But we do not consider you to be a sinner." Now, obviously, you made an unwise choice. And boy, is that unwise choice ever going to complicate your life. Okay. But we do not consider you to be a sinner. We don't want to shun you. We don't want to pull you out of your normal school and send you out to this school. You need your friends around you now more than ever. So they went to the principal and they said, hey, can she please stay in this school? You know, she's pretty great. And to his credit, the principal said, you betcha. Okay? So she stayed. Her friends were so wonderfully supportive. She finished out the year. She got her diploma. So many girls in her situation don't. But she got her diploma. And in fact, on graduation day, when she walked across that stage to get her diploma, belly up to here, looked like she's 8.5 months pregnant. When she walked across that stage, you should have heard her fellow students cheer for her. It was so wonderful. I will cherish that memory for the rest of my life. Whenever I'm losing faith in humanity, I pull out that memory and I'm just asking the Lord that memory. Life can be beautiful if you'll throw out the shackles of religion, religious dogma. Well, okay, now you might not say religion, but religious dogma. Throw off the chains of religious dogma. So I forgot to set the clock here when I started. I don't know how we're doing for time. How much time do we have?
We got about 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'm going to skip through some things. There's a lot of stuff that I could talk about. You might think that polygamy cults are just a small thing, but the tiny tool has been here from holding out help. And so I hope you know that it's not just a few people. And it's here in Salt Lake. One of my students. One day she stopped attending school, and the parents said, well, we're going to homeschool you. That's the parents told the office that we had decided to homeschool her, but her friends told us the truth. Her friends told us that she ended up getting married to some creepy old guy who already had several wives. And so, religion is causing direct harm here in these situations. So me and my friends at the Freedom, the Salt Lake chapter of FFRF, we're wondering, is this something we want to get involved in? We do something here. Now, this is a subject we have to be super careful about, because there is at least one religion in this state that teaches young children that polygamy is okay. If God commands it, you got to do it. I mean, if you've been watching the news, you know the story behind these things. So if we at FFRF would talk about this, potentially very dangerous place to go. Criticism of church authorities is not allowed. It does not matter that the criticism is true. So I would like some feedback from you during the Q&A session. Is this something that we might want to try out, or is this something we should stay the hell away from? Okay, it would be counterproductive for us to do something. Now, one thing that we as an organization do is just service projects and fundraising. That's something we're super thinking about doing. And so you guys already know about Holding Out Help, because they do a wonderful organization. So I've been talking with them about are there ways that FFRF can work with them, do some service projects and some fundraising. So we can do that. Let me bounce another idea, one that's hopefully a little less controversial. I trust you know that Utah state legislators, in their infinite wisdom, passed a law requiring that every school in Utah must display the phrase "in God we trust," and it must be prominently displayed. That's part of the law. It has to be prominently displayed. So what about the kids who come from families that don't trust Him, that don't believe in God? So when they walk down the hallway, they have to walk past this sign that sends a very clear message. It says, if you don't trust in God, then in the eyes of this school, the word "we" does not include you. You are an outsider. So this is something that I feel very strongly is wrong, and I'd like to get some efforts going to maybe do something about it. And I am now retired, but when I was a teacher, I made up this sign, and I put this sign in my classroom. Okay? So, yeah, state legislature says that you are required to put these words on the wall. So I said, okay, they're on the wall. But that's a very exclusive message. Let's send an inclusive message. Let's let everybody know that regardless of what you do or do not believe regarding religion, everyone is welcome in this classroom. So like I said, that was a sign on the wall when I was a teacher. So I've since retired, but I went back to school. In fact, just Friday I was there. And I saw that the teacher who took over my classroom did not take down that wall.
Yeah.
Yes. So I would like to get a grassroots effort going, where people try to get things like this. You go to your school and say, hey, you put something like that in there. I have several extra copies of this, if anyone's interested. I have some copies.
We have a table out front for that.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
We do.
You know, here's another sign that I put up in my classroom. You know, that one student that I told you about when he died, and I said, I gotta do something. So I put up a banner in my classroom that looks like this, okay? So when the Utah State Legislature says, so you can't have a pride flag in your classroom. I said, pride flag? What do you mean? This is a teaching aid for physics. Why don't they wave lights and line? And by the way, I have several of those.
Yes.
So these are the kinds of things that I hope would be non-controversial. I'd like to get your feedback on it. So I know I'm running really short on time. Let me just, here's one thing that I don't have enough time to talk about, but let me just Twitter version real quick. So I hope you know that Utah is always ranked near the bottom in education span. Either second to the bottom or third bottom, some of you at the bottom. Now you might say, yes, that's horrible, but what's that got to do with religion? Well, I could tell you a story that would make your blood boil. But I'm out of time, so. But there is a Q&A session. Okay, so we're out of time, so let's skip that. All right, so here we go. So if what I've said today piques your interest at all in the Freedom from Religion Foundation, this is the website for the national organization. This is where you can go to become a member. If you'd like to know more about the Salt Lake chapter, here's our website. If you'd like to contact us for any reason, here's the email address. And so now, Q&A time. I'd like to hear from you. What do you think about those ideas? Do you think those are things that are worth talking about, or do you think, don't go there, don't go there?